This is close for us. Should everyone find a seat? Okay, Rabosai. Everyone find a seat, Bezrat Hashem. And it's supposed for us. It's Mr. Moshe Smith. R. Smith was a good friend of the yeshiva, come many times in the past. I remember when I was younger, there was a thing called the Magellan Fund, which was they kept advertising New York Times. This is the most super duper fund, and I understand that due to super duper directors who were involved, Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith was very, very successful in the world that you guys think is the ultimate world. The world of finance, the world of the world. And Baruch Hashem, now he is deeply, now maybe always, but now deeply, deeply steeped in what I call the real world. Let's see what the conclusion is. With no further ado.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, and it's great feedback at the yeshiva. I understand you'll be eating lunch afterwards, which is always a difficult time slot. I speak quickly, so hopefully I'll be able to cover what I want to in a relatively short time span. My normal speed's about 1.5, and on a good day I could do a 2.0 on a voice record. But anyway, at first I'd like to start with really Sanya. This is an incredible yeshiva. Know it for many, many years. We lived in the Aryeh, my wife, my family, from 1992 to 1999. My wife was a student at with Malka Bina for many years at Matan, and still today. Matter of fact, she's there right now at Matan this morning, taking some classes there. And our relationship with the Binas go back from that time period. It's a phenomenal yeshiva, a phenomenal rebbe. You know it, everybody knows it. They care so much for you, and you just so have incredible skills to be in this Makom Torah. So what I'd like to do in sketching out this talk today, I'm going to give you a very brief biographical sketch. You want to read a little bit more about it, I'm sure you'll find something online. But I want to really deal with life post-yeshiva. In a sense, the challenges that you'll have either in university and or afterwards in the workforce, and how I think, based upon some of my own experiences speaking to others, how it's best for you to handle those experiences. Also, I have at least the privilege, I would describe, as being the chairman of the Aryeh Commission at the OU, what's called JLIC on campus, Jewish Leadership Initiative on campus. So I've had a chance to go around to some secular campuses over the past year, and it's helped give me, I think, even a better idea of what's going on at the college campuses and maybe how to relate to some of those topics. So with that background, let me get started. Born in 1957, went to Yeshiva Flatbush, graduated, came to Eretz Yisrael, went for 1 year to Beit Medrash Torah, which existed really now, turned into Torah Shraga post that time period. Went to Queens College, got a BA in both accounting and in economics, graduated in 1979, got married in 1979, worked in public accounting just enough to have experience to get my CPA degree. Went to Wharton School of Business 1980 to 1982, graduated with a degree in finance. Very difficult job environment to get hired. People always wonder about good or bad times. Thank God today is good. But that was a time period where inflation was in double digits, unemployment rate was in double digits, and I was extraordinarily fortunate to be hired by Fidelity Investments in their investment management area. At that time, in the early 80s, no one went into that field. The stock market had been in a bear market for about 16 years between 1966 and 1982, and there was really very little traction. Money had flown out of the industry, etc. I was incredibly fortunate to join a company literally at the cusp of a bull market. You can even argue it's that bull market that started in 82 to some degree still continues till today, but without a question, it went from 1982 to the year 2000. And I was there for the first 10 years of that. And I happened to have been at probably the most successful firm on Wall Street at that time. Fidelity was a hot shot place. Again, you can read historical articles about it, and I sort of hitched my wagon to that train, and my professional career really took off. I started the first year as an analyst covering housing industries, gaming, lodging, etc. Year 2, I worked as an assistant on one of our funds, and the starting of the third year, they already gave me a small pilot fund to manage, which was the Fidelity Leisure and Entertainment Fund. Ran that fund for 2 years. Baruch Hashem, the fund was very much went from basically zero of assets to $350 million in assets, and had a really good record over that period. In 1986, 4 years at Fidelity, the person running a fund called the Fidelity Over-the-Counter Fund decided to leave Fidelity to start his own hedge fund, so they gave me this fund to manage, which was roughly $1 billion at that time. Took over the fund, managed that for 4 years, was a terrific fund, very interesting, very research intensive, lived through the crash of 1987, which I could probably give an hour-long speech on, but we're not going to do that today. And thankfully the fund had a very good record over those 4 years. In 1990, Peter Lynch, who was truly the Michael Jordan or Babe Ruth of the investment business, decided to retire from Fidelity at the age of 47. And they asked me to take over his fund. His fund had the #1 record in the country over the last 5, 10, 15 years, whatever the statistics were, and was by far the largest equity fund in the world at $13 billion, which in those days was a lot of money. So I managed that fund for about 2 years, and the first 2 or 3 months were very, very difficult. It was the time period of the first Iraqi war, the war with Iraq, with Kuwait, etc., and when the Scud missiles fell on Israel in 1991, etc. So plus there was a commercial real estate disaster, debacle going on in the United States. The stock market managed to go down 20% in about 3 months after I took over the Magellan Fund, and I managed to do as poorly as the market in that time period. So all these negative articles started to appear. Can I do the job? Blah blah blah. And I got very lucky because I kind of figured the United States would win a war, which we did in 1991, and I had the fund very aggressively positioned in early '91, and the market started to recover as the recession started to lessen up in the United States, and as we won the war, confidence came back in the U.S. economy, and the fund went up 41% that year. The fund grew to over $20 billion. 1992 was going well, and I decided in the middle of 1992 that I was going to retire from the active investment management business, which was a shock for everybody. And as much as there were articles when I took over the fund in 1990, there were just as many articles in 1992 when I announced I was going to be leaving the fund, leaving Fidelity after 10 years, taking a leave of absence, and going to learn in yeshiva part-time in Eretz Yisrael. It didn't make sense to anyone. Maybe for some frum people it did, but for the general outside world it was very, very hard to relate to. Since that time period, over the last 26, 27 years, my day has really been split between learning Torah and staying involved in the investment business, and obviously in growing a family. Devar and I got married in 1979. We have been blessed, B'li Ayin Hara, with 5 children, 4 of them married, with now 12 grandchildren. We were blessed on this trip. We had 11 grandsons till Tuesday night. We flew in on this past Tuesday night. Devar and myself, I was actually coming in to pay a shiva call to a very close friend of mine, Beryl Eckstein, who lost his brother, Yechiel Eckstein, who I'm sure you've read much about. And we landed about 5:15 on Tuesday night, and our first granddaughter was born at 6:30 that evening, which was a tremendous simcha for all of us. So anyway, we have 5 children. Right at this point, 2 of my children live in Eretz Yisrael, 3 of them live in the States. The grandchildren are 5 here, 7 there. And we spend probably 20% of our time here, and about 25% of the time, let's say, and 75-80% in the States. We travel back and forth all the time. We lived here from 1992 to 1999. And then we went back to the States for a couple of reasons at that time period, and I've been living over the last 20 years in the 5 towns in Lawrence, New York. That's the brief biographical sketch. Just one other tidbit. I've been involved in a number of not-for-profits, not to go through all of them. I'm very involved with the OU right now, the Orthodox Union. I'm very good friends with Moshe Bain, who's doing a great job as president, and I'm involved as treasurer and run, as I mentioned, JLIC, and a number of other things that I won't discuss today. Okay, back to the topic at hand, the challenges of the workforce. So the challenges that I had in the 80s have only gotten more severe today. And I think it's so important for you, before you go out into the world, to have a real understanding of what you're going to be facing, and then you have to have an understanding of how you're going to deal with it. First of all, I want to start off with one really important premise. And finally, there is an English sefer that has been written about this topic. I've spoken about this for many, many years, about how I feel that when people go out into the workforce, that you actually have a chance to create an incredible Kiddush Hashem every single day of your life. In other words, it's not a b'diavad necessarily that you're working. It could be a lechatchila. And the Kiddush Hashem that you could create every single day is unbelievable. And if you view your life in that fashion, it will just change your whole mindset of what you're doing out there. You won't necessarily feel guilty if you're not able to spend as much time as you would really love to in learning and other things that are important for yourself. The book was called, I think, A Ben Torah for Life by Rav Aaron Lopiansky, and it, for the first time, addressed the reality of life, that you shouldn't have to feel bad about working. It's obviously a much more severe issue in the yeshiva field, and I think the book is definitely addressing that market more, but I think it applies to all of us, no matter what form of orthodoxy you are. This is an important message to understand, that you can do Kiddush Hashem at all times. Now, the issues you're going to face in college, even in YU, this could be an issue, or probably less so maybe in Landers, but definitely in YU, but especially if you go to secular colleges, will be a set of moral values that are completely changed and are so antithetical to everything that we believe in as Jews. First of all, as is very well known, Israel has become almost a pariah on most campuses. You all know about BDS. I'm not going to review that stuff, but we all know that the world has changed. There are so many more anti-Semitic events that occur on college campuses, not so much, I think, on the day-to-day workforce, but you're seeing it obviously more and more in American politics. I don't have to speak about Europe. We all know about that. So that has become a major, major challenge on campus. Obviously, there's the issue of LGBTQ rights, etc. It's almost become a situation in the United States and definitely in Europe, where being religious, you're now a persecuted minority to some extent, and we have to work hard at just keeping the rights that we have. And that is a tremendous sea change from 25 years ago. The other challenges that you have as an individual now to deal with is also, how do you grow and remain and grow as a Ben Torah the rest of your life, especially with being so busy with your lives, with many, many distractions, etc. And those are sort of some of the things you'll be worried about and working through as you go through life. Life gets complicated. Life in yeshiva is unbelievable. You go to college, you start worrying about a job. You have to get married, it's Hashem should be b'karo. And then you get married, you have families. It's not easy, and nobody will tell you differently. And you have to manage really time stresses that you'll have and priorities in your life. And maybe what I'd like to try to do, I'm assuming you all agree with those general comments that I made till now, you can ask me questions afterwards, is to try to give you a couple, I would call, tricks of the trade. And I think they work well if you can handle them. One of the most important things I hopefully that you learn while you're here in yeshiva is the idea of disciplining your life. You know, many of you come from high school where it's a little bit more hefker, and you come here and and I think one of the great things about Netiv is I think they do stress the importance of discipline and how you utilize your time and try to utilize it as best a fashion as possible. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the aspect of learning Torah. You'll say, okay, that's a given, okay? And we're all trying to do as best as we can that area. But when you have the challenges of work, it's not so pasha. It's really much more complicated than you think. How can you carve out time to have set kaviyas in Torah, kavata itim in Torah? It's very interesting that when we talk about the six questions that you're going to be asked when you come to the Olam HaEmes. The daf is Shabbos Lamed Aleph. Amongst the questions we're asked, the second question actually is the first question is Nasata v'Natata b'Emunah. Did you do your business in a straightforward, honest fashion? Something I think I'm going to speak about also. But the second question is Kavata itim l'Torah. Now you notice it doesn't say how many hours did you spend learning Torah. It talks about did you establish set times for learning Torah. That is unbelievably important. One of the most significant events that occurred in my life, I look back 30, 35, 40 years ago, when I was in yeshiva here for 1 year, the Rav I had in BMT, Rav Rappaport, our Gemara Rebbe, said to us towards the end of the year, he said, I want to tell all of you one thing. If you're able to establish a kaviyus of just 1 hour a day in learning going forward, you won't understand how much you will be accomplishing. I think all of us sort of laughed when he said that because, oh yeah, an hour a day, of course you can do that. It's not so simple as that. And as life gets more and more complicated, you really have to work hard to make sure you have those time periods to go out and to establish chavrusas and to learn. One of the great developments, as we all know, over the past really decades, has been the aspect of yomi, whether it's learning daf yomi, mishnah yomi, halacha yomi, etc. That is part of discipline of learning. And when you utilize that, it puts you into a groove. And that could be through chavrusa, that could be through going to a shir, etc. That is. And again, when you have a yomi attached to it, it's 7 days a week, it's 52 weeks a year, it works out unbelievably. But you have to see what really works for you in learning. So one of the key things I always stress when I speak to people is the aspect of wasting time. Everybody talks about how we need to have downtime, and I'm not against downtime. We all need some time to rest and relax. But we all waste time, and we're all honest with ourselves, and we know it. And one of my things that I feel so strongly about is that at the end of the day, especially at night, your productivity goes down, you get tired, you start to waste time, and that could just be surfing the net or doing whatever the heck you want at night. And I always try to tell people, if you just went to sleep a half hour earlier every night and got up a half hour earlier every morning, right? You can take that half hour, just a half hour I'm talking about, and say, okay, this is kavat to eat the mudra. Nobody can touch, let's say it's 5:30 to 6 in the morning. I am not touchable in that time period. And it's incredible, if you're doing, for example, an Amud Yomi, you can do 180 blot a year doing that. And if you spend an hour, you can do it between the 60 dabbim. Every time you steal time from the night and bring it to the morning, you'll be adding so much to your life. It is clear and again, yeah, I am talking my own book, as they would say in the investment business, but it's a reality. I get up very, very early. I wake up when I'm in Israel, I wake up at 4:55. In the States, I wake up around 4:40, 4:30, 4:50, depending on the day. And I try to learn long stretches in the morning because you don't have those sorts of distractions that build in during the day. One of the great rules, if you can hold to this, is don't look at your iPhone until after davening. I'm not 100% at it. Very few people I think are. But the less time you spend looking at other things, the more you'll be able to really develop a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through your learning and through your tefillah time before you get involved in your day. It is very, very rare that there's something on that iPhone that something has to be addressed between 5 in the morning and 9 in the morning. It's just not that common. And if your workday starts at 7:30, let's say from 5 to 7:30, whatever that may be, it's really rare that something's going to come up. Again, you have to find what's good for you as far as whether it's chavrus and what you like to learn. Make sure whatever you learn is something that you enjoy, but make kaviyas in it. So that would be message number 1. Now, message number 2, which is really, you can call it 1A or 1B. I've spoken about this topic forever, because it's such an important part of our life. This happens to be an Apple. I'm an iPhone user. And it's very interesting, when the iPhone started, the whole generation of smartphones, as you know, I'm sure you all know, there was a lot of controversy. Is it good or it's bad? How do you utilize it? And it's like, I'll tell you an interesting story. Last night, I was on a call about 11:40 at night with the person, Jay Lobel, lives in Manhattan, and he happens to be right now in Israel, came in for a couple of days. And I happened to mention to him, I forgot how we got onto it, I'm speaking here today. So he said, I have a pasuk, and I make sure I wrote it down, because it's a famous pasuk from Netiv about how I view basically this tool called the iPhone. The pasuk in Netiv reads as follows: Rei natati lachem lefanecha hayom et hachayim v'et hatov v'et hamavet v'et hara. Okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you the choices of good or bad. Let's call it that. Now, when you're given choices of good or bad in your life, who would not choose good? I think you get 100% answer on that one, right? So what is the Torah really driving at when it says that pasuk? And Jay said to me, he believes the message of the pasuk is everything in this world can be good or bad. It's just a question of how you use it. So this can be great, and this could be horrific. You can ruin your life with this, or you can make your life incredibly enhanced by this. We talked about the importance about Kaviyas Torah. So I walk around with this a lot. Why? Because I listen to this all the time. The amount of Torah that you have on this device is unbelievable. And what is so beautiful is you can, instead of these times that are wasted in your life, you can take such an advantage of it. I hate exercising, okay? I'm very honest about it. But I have to exercise. I have a few stents, things like that. So I exercise every day on a bike. I'm really good. I do it like 5 or 6 days a week, 40 minutes. If I had to do that, just exercising on a bike, I would go out of my mind. I wouldn't be here today. They had me locked up. So, but I take this with me, and I listen to a shear. It's unbelievable. And you play things at 1.5, you get a lot more productive. I think almost every speaker you can listen to at 1.5. Some you could do at 2.0. Depends who, and depends how focused you are. But that is a lot. So in a 40-minute exercise routine, I get 60 minutes of Torah. That's unbelievable. What a payback. That is a high ROI. And return on investment, you guys will learn about that in finance. It's a good deal. So again, use the tools you have. And it's not just that. My wife takes it, right? My wife loves walking on Atlantic Beach, right? The whole summertime. And she takes the same thing. She takes the iPhone, listens to Robert Ross's shiurim on Nach or whatever, and it's like fantastic. So you should just take advantage of all these tools that you have when you're going to the train, when you're walking in Manhattan. No matter what you're doing, take the iPhone. You can listen to a 10-minute halachic shiur from Aryeh Leibowitz, and you play 1.5, so it's like 7.5 minutes. Okay, he usually runs 15 or 20 minutes long, so it's 10 minutes still by the time you get through with it. The point is, utilize those periods. Don't look at garbage on the internet. Use it for Torah. Okay. Next topic, the actual work environment. It is really, really important to set up gedarim around yourself. Okay, we know Chazal set up gezeros and takanos, or we know what that's all about. It's so interesting. If you look at Moshe Rabbeinu, if Moshe Rabbeinu came here this Shabbos and wanted to observe Shabbos, he would not recognize what our Shabbos is. All the gezeros and takanos, so much of what we do in Shabbos is based upon what Chazal set up as takanos, gezeros, as gedarim, fences, to make sure that our Shabbos is reflective of true Shabbos experience. This was not existent in the time Moshe. They had a true Shabbos experience, but it was very different in their environment than what we have today. Chazal, in their brilliance, understood what had to be done, and those types of gederos that you set up for yourself are just as important for yourself as an individual as it was for Chazal, and it is for Chazal as they set up for today. We don't set up formal gederos today in that sense, but still we do implement many halachas that really are gezeros or gederos against doing things wrong. So what do I mean by that? In the workforce, there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to go out socially with coworkers, etc. Dangerous thing to do. Dangerous thing to do at night, dangerous thing to do on the weekends. You have to be very, very careful. All the years I worked at Fidelity, I think there were 2 times in 10 years I did something at night because I went to hear a special speaker, had to meet with a company at night once. You don't want to get around, especially be involved in the social scene with professionals in an evening. Now, something that is maybe not necessarily that important, it's important halachically, but it's not yareg v'yavor, is and I get this question all the time, is the question of a kippah. Should I wear a kippah on the job, yes or no? And halachically, you can speak to Rabban, you'll know what the answers to that are. But the kippah has turned into a very, very important shmirah for many, many people. When you wear it at the job, it sort of always reminds you that you're different, and you do want to differentiate yourself from other people. So I think it's important as much more than you would say on a strict basis halachically. In addition to that, when you're in the workforce, what you have to try to always emphasize, and this goes back to the Kiddush Hashem, just to acknowledge Rabbi, it's good to see you here. So when you're in the workforce, it's extremely important to remember the aspect of Kiddush Hashem in what you're doing. There has unfortunately been many times over the years there have been real chilulei Hashem that have occurred from Jewish people out there. Probably the best well-known one over my lifetime was Bernie Madoff, who's not religious, but in the view of the outside world, religious and not religious is not necessarily a big differentiating point. But whenever you're wearing a kippah, whenever you're known to be a religious Jew, you're being held on a different pedestal. It is incredibly important for you to make sure that the way you do your business is kehalacha in all aspects. You should have rabbanim to ask shilas to, and you should be willing to stand by what the rabbanim tell you to do. I will tell you over the years, and this continues till today. I will tell you a story that happened in the last 6 months, just to give you an idea of what it is to be what I would describe as a halachic Jew in the workforce. So I spend, as I mentioned, I spend part of my time doing investing. The money that I've been able to accumulate over time, I invest in different areas. So I was looking about 6 months ago at an investment in a private company that is manufacturing hemp. Hemp is a product that you probably know about, and it was an interesting startup located in Rhode Island. I happen to know the CEO of the company, and we had conversations. As a private company, and the CEO would own about 18% of the company. Now the problem was the CEO was Jewish. And as we all know, there are issues with companies that have active operations on Shabbos. So on a public company, there's a lot less issues since a public shareholder has basically no rights in a company. It's more of a, I would say, more almost fictitious to some degree. And Moshe has Juvas related to that area. But private companies are different. And so I called Rav Chaim Cohen in New York, a very, very well-known posek in areas of business halacha. And I told him I have this problem. So incredible. Rav Chaim Cohen calls up the CEO of this company, spent an hour on the phone with him. I mean, incredible, going over exactly how the operations work, etc. And after he finished, we spoke, and he said to me, there's just no way you can make this investment. And he went over the reasons why, because the largest investor, the person I know, happens to be the CEO of the company. And he basically makes the decisions that the firm should be in operation 24/7, 365. Once that was the gedder, once that was the halacha, it was over. This may turn out to be a great investment, may turn out going to zero, but it was no longer a possibility. I'll tell you another story. I won't mention the person's name. Somebody was looking at making a large investment in a company going private. The problem was they were dealing with Machos Asuros, a very well-known chain in the United States with thousands of stores. And he was going to take a large equity position, and he was told halachically, and we spoke about it on the phone because he asked me a shaila related to a conversation we had with another Rav. There was just no way for him to do it. So we pass up on those opportunities. So that's, again, another example of using halacha and making it part of your life. I do quite a few investments also. You have to be worried about Skar Shabbos, people working, etc. You have to make sure that if there's a management company, you have non-Jews working there, etc. So with most of the real estate investments I have, the GPs, let's say they're religious, some of them are not, but most of them, let's say, are religious, they have halakhic consultants to make sure they go over all the agreements they have, that it follows das kedin as you're supposed to. These are things that should be paramount on your life as you go through it and thinking about halacha. My son Mordechai is a doctor. He started working this year. He's going to neurology. So before he was very fortunate to go to Einstein Medical School. And he has his Rav there, Rav Schreier, answers his shilas all the time. He's got to be on call half the Shabbosim. There's shilas all the time, and he's able to navigate those shilas with the help of a Rav. So again, the importance of making sure you integrate in your work life a fact you have a halachic perspective, and again, a perspective that you don't want to get too close to your coworkers. You want to be able to be friendly and work with them, but you don't want to get involved too much with the social scene. The exception to that rule, however, is in the area of kiruv. All of us have a responsibility when you're working with other Jewish employees who are not religious to befriend them. And no, you don't have to be out there give me a card-carrying member. But there are very nice ways around the Chag of Purim, today's Shushan Purim, cotton today in Yerushalayim. There are ways to be able to bring people. You can invite for a Shabbos meal, you can bring Mishloach Manot. Whatever you decide, it's a beautiful way of introducing Yiddishkeit to people who may have never had exposure to that aspect. One last thing I wanted to suggest, there's a book that you have to read. It was written by Aryeh, I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago, called Making It Work. I think frankly, I think every yeshiva here should give that sefer out to everybody who leaves when they leave the yeshiva. It is the best book that's been written about what you're going to face in the workforce and how to handle it. It's literally a handbook. It is a priceless sefer, 500 pages, worth it when you go to college, but worth it even more when you start to get out into the workforce. Finally, I want to talk about one last thing, and then I'd like to open it up to questions. Typically, those are more interesting for me, at least. I don't know where the Shana Aleph guys are. I think Shana Bet is muhrach. I don't think it's even like, again, I realize everybody has an individual situation. I'm making a general statement. But to be in yeshiva, for a lot of guys, and it's no different, I think it's ever been different, it takes some time to get geared up Shana Aleph. You do have the fortunate situation this year of an extra month with Adar Aleph. But Shana Aleph is really a growth curve. When you have a Shana Bet, you solidify everything you got here year one. It is the best investment you will make in your life. Because it doesn't make a difference if you start to work at 23 or 24 or 27, 28. That 1 year is not going to make a difference. But this year that you invest, and it's that additional year that you invest in your growth in Torah, and for some that may be Shana Gimel, the payback for that, again, is immeasurable. So I don't know where you are in that process, but I, as an individual, as a Baal bias, cannot emphasize that enough as a point for all of you. Okay, those are the high points of what I wanted to discuss. I'd like to open up to questions. Anything you want to ask me about, it could be investments, colleges, work, etc. Just, feel free to shoot. Yeah, in the back.
Was Peter Lynch a good person?
Peter Lynch is actually a very good person. He himself is a devout Catholic, was great to work with, very intense individual. He had a great work ethic, and I think really had good moral values. He was a very good role model. I'll tell you a great Peter Lynch story. In 1993, I believe it was either 93, 94, he came to Israel for the first time in his life. And I was at a dinner with him together at, I forget where it was made, the King David, I forget where the dinner was. And it was with the Massachusetts Federation, the CJP of Massachusetts. They came to Israel, and it really established a twinning operation between Boston, I think, and Yerushalayim at that time. Anyway, so Peter was on that trip. And what he decided, he had heard that there's always people davening at the Kotel 24/7, 365. This was Peter Lynch. He was always very research analytically driven. So he took a cab at 2 in the morning to come to the Kotel to check. And thank God there were people davening there. So he was impressed by that, what he saw right here. But Peter was a really good guy to work with, and I learned so much from him, and really from the entire staff at Fidelity. It was a great team to work with. Next. There's got to be questions. Go ahead.
Do you have any tips specifically about secular college?
Sure. I talk a lot about secular college now. I really do know a lot more about it because of the work I'm doing. The challenges in secular college are much more significant than they are if you go to Landers, YU, etc. There's no question about it. I think people who try to poo-poo that are making a mistake. With that, and if you're going to ask me where should you go, I will always say YU or Landers before a secular college. Fine. I went to Queens College, by the way. However, with that preamble, I'll discuss the following. I guess this is a little bit of an advertisement, but that's okay. So, I have very strong research to show that if you do go to a secular college, and if there's a JLIC couple on that campus, JLIC being what I mentioned before, and if you interact strongly with that couple and involved with their programming, you can actually grow in your religious experiences on campus. We have extensive data that we have done in analyzing what happens to high school graduates. They go back to secular college. How do they react afterwards? And the data is unbelievable. That if you have to be a participant, you have to be a player, you have to be active. But if you go in with that attitude that you're going to go to the shiurim, you're going to have a chavrusa, you're going to participate in the minions, you can really do well. I happen to have brought, by chance, a piece of paper, because I think it's unbelievable. So we did this survey last year. I'm just going to read some of the topics. We actually asked questions on 12 different topics. I'm not going to go through all of this. But for example, the underlying question is, how has the following changed for you between when you graduated high school and now? So for example, personal Jewish learning, Torah study. Okay? Now these are people who had a substantive relationship and are regular participants in JLIC programming. You got that? Okay, the ones who want to be part of it. Of that group, 15% said it decreased, 18% said it was little change, and 65% said it increased or increased substantially. That's related to Torah study. Second item, personal sense of spirituality. 9% said it decreased, 26% the same, 65% said it increased or increased substantially. And then maybe, this could almost be the most important thing of all of this, I shouldn't say that maybe, is the third topic, general respect and appreciation for Jewish and rabbinical leaders, which I think is something that's so underestimated in our society. Only 5% said it had decreased, 30% said the same, and 65% said it had been increased or increased substantially. That is an unbelievable verification of what these couples do on campus. You know, when I started as the commission head, I thought it was basically try to triage. You know, you look at a hospital, you're trying to triage these kids through 4 years of college. They can actually go through this experience and have a growth experience. Now, I will say to you in the same sentence, we are dealing now with the issue of, let's say they're not married at the end of college and they get out into the workforce, this same problem exists. And we've talked about putting couples literally on the west side, etc. How do you deal with these people afterwards? It is really a challenge. I will tell you, for my son Mordechai, who I mentioned, he happens not to be married. He's 28, dating someone, Yetz Hashem. But those 4 years that he was in medical school in Einstein was a savior, because it's a beautiful cocoon to be in, and it really helped. He went from YU to Einstein. It was incredible. But if you're not in YU, right, or you're not in Landers, you really have to connect with the JLIC couples, in my opinion. And I would tell you, I would urge you to go to a campus that has a JLIC couple there. I'm sorry for the advertisement, but I think it was important. Yes?
What was that point where you said, all right, that's enough work, and then I'm going to go and...
The question was, what was that point that said, I've had enough work and I'm going to go and change my lifestyle? So I worked really hard at Fidelity for 10 years. When I was running Magellan, it was 70 hours plus a week, and it overtook your life. But even when I wasn't running Magellan, it was 60 hours a week. It was a very intense job. And I had accomplished a lot professionally in a very short time period. I really had career compression as far as accomplishing personal goals. I was running the largest fund in the world, and it had a good record. Okay, so you can keep on doing that, and by the way, it's not bad. You get paid okay. It's not a bad thing to be doing. But there's more to life than that, and this is 1992, and I'm 34 years old, and I said, there's more to life. And this is a true story. Nobody believes me. I was shopping, I think it was Erev Pesach, literally Erev Pesach, in Shaw's Supermarket in Sharon, Massachusetts, and I was buying romaine lettuce. I remember this. I said, I think I just need a break. I hadn't gone shopping in months and months, and my life was just being overtaken by my job, I felt. And that was sort of the point that I said, I need to make a shift. By the way, I wanted to say one thing. Even when I was working like a crazy man, this is really important. When I was working at Fidelity, it was incredibly intense. I think you say, well, how did you make that decision to go back to learn part-time? Two really important factors I had in my life. First of all, I used to learn Mishnayos on the train going in, just a Mishnah or two, whatever it was. That kept me in learning. Second of all, I had a chavrus on the weekend. We used to get up a Sunday morning, 6:30 in the morning to learn, and then we extended that to Shabbos afterward. We learned Gemara for many years together and went through a number of Masechta. Those hooks keep you in the game. That kept me in the game at that time. And when I felt I just needed a reshift of balances in my life, when we came to Israel, that was a 1-year decision. I took a 1-year leave of absence, turned into 7 years, and it changed my life. If you would ask me, to me, it was like Hakadosh Baruch Hu gave me the most unbelievable gift in life. how much is enough money? You never know what's enough money, but Hashem gave me enough the time I left the job. Baruch Hashem, things have worked out well since then. And I've had the capability of having a chelik of olam haba and olam hazeh, because the time I spend learning is the best time of my life. If I have a tough day, let's say for example I had a bad day, a bad month in the market, but you know the feeling you get up in the morning and you get up, and I learn usually 3 hours before I daven, and you know, and I spent that almost all on daf yomi, that first 3 hours. It's unbelievable. I love it. It's intellectually stimulating, it's challenging, it's relevant, it's connection, and it's just an incredible bracha to have. Again, most people aren't going to get that, but you want to make sure you have those brachas part of your life every single day, whether it's a half hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, but you want it to be part of your life all the time. Yes?
Has Fidelity or any other investment fund approached you after your retirement to have a meeting?
Has Fidelity or other investment funds, etc., approached me? Yes, I've been approached by different people at different times, but it's something I just don't want to ever go back. I didn't want to. Yet Hashem will never have to go back to doing full time. The investment business is incredibly intense, especially I'm very much of a type A and really want to know my companies, etc. It just doesn't work on a part-time basis. And so I have to work on an advisory board for some place, and I've done that type of work in the past, but that's very different than managing money on a day-to-day basis. It's very, very intense. And once I walked away from it, you know, I spent the next 10 years, between 1992 and 2002, I spent a lot, the part-time I was learning, I learned from 8 to 1 here, and then I would work from 1 to 6, and I was involved. They used to call my companies. I knew every Israeli public company cold. I was living here, and it was great. Investments went well, etc. But again, that takes a toll on you. And as I've gotten older, I've been really blessed to be able to spend more and more time learning, and you have other people run my money. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. You try to do the best you can, like anything else. Yes.
What do you and JLIC see as the largest problem on college campuses right now?
What are the largest problems on college campuses? I think it goes back to the point I mentioned before. The morals and values on campus today are antithetical to being a religious Jew. Alan Kadish, the president of Torah, was over my house a few years ago. A great conversation. He said to me that, you know, when we went to school, I grew up in the mid 70s, whatever it was, and you went to college, there wasn't a great difference in what your basic values were versus the average person on a college campus. Everyone wanted to work hard, kind of believed that old Judeo-Christian moral ethic. There wasn't craziness going on, and we just wanted to get out there, get jobs, and there was no anti-Semitism. Israel was viewed in relatively positive light. We didn't have any of these issues. Today, everything has shifted. The values are completely crazy. You know, and you see it again. You see, this is not a political discussion, but just look at the Democratic Party today and look at what it's irrelevant. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on. It's nuts. So you're going into an environment that is so. I have nephews and nieces who are in college. Yeah, in Queens College. You're afraid to go into these classrooms. These professors are Looney Tunes. I mean, they're just, and they will not accept any opinion except for their crazy opinions that they want to hear. It's really tough. When you're in a class and you can't respond, you know, what you think is right, and there's no freedom of speech on a college campus because you're suppressed if you happen to have a view that's somewhere in the center or the right. That's horrible. And it defeats the whole purpose of quote-unquote having open dialogue. Liberalism is such a farce. They're the most intolerant I'm sorry, I'm getting political.
You're getting excited now.
I apologize, but it's just, there's no tolerance. Except liberalism is a religion and has no tolerance for other opinions. And that's dangerous. All right, I'm sorry for that. Don't want to go next, in the back.
What should be the balance between your learning and family time?
What
should be the balance between
the balance? Got it. Balance between a very important question between learning and family time. I'm going to extend your question and say your work time. So there's 3 balances, correct? You have the work time, and you have the family time, and yeah, I will describe it the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu time. So Vince Lombardi, you tell how old I am. Vince Lombardi, the great coach of the Green Bay Packers, and I love this line, I remembered it for many, many years. He said life is a tripod. Those three elements you just mentioned is that tripod. And how you manage that tripod is critical in your life. That had a lot to do with my decision in 1992. I felt that the work life was overtaking other parts of my life, and I didn't have enough time to invest in those other areas. I think you have to have a constant awareness of all three of those parts, including, by the way, whatever field you go into, you have to be sensitive. You know, for example, you could go work in a law firm where you know you're going to work 90 hours a week and have to pay that price. Is that worth it? You have to think about that. It's not so partial. You know, you can pick parts of within a law firm which may not be as lucrative, but the hours may not be as extensive. I think you have to give enough significance to that when you're thinking about the field that you're going into. You have to make a good parnas. You have to pay for your yeshiva costs. These are all precious. Raising families is difficult. And you know, in our generation, it is very difficult because we are so blessed today. I'll just tell you about my own family. My mother, Baruch Hashem, is 91 years old. She is a Holocaust survivor. There's my mother. There's our family, Devar and myself. There are my children, and now, believe it or not, my 12 grandchildren. I'm trying to deal with 4 generations. And my mother requires more time, different areas, because her health is not as great as it was at one time, etc. And you are really busy with family issues. And Baruch Hashem, families are much larger, and you're involved with simchas. And it's fantastic, but it does take time also. But you can't push aside your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It has to be primary. That's why davening 3 times a day is extraordinarily important. Minyan's important because of the discipline, besides the fact that you get the zchus of getting the I work at davening. Davening is so, I think, is one of the greatest challenges. Not to go to minyan. That to me is because I'm disciplined. I go to minyan all the time. But you know, being focused in your tefillah is really hard on a daily basis. When you daven with the minyan, you're being part of a cloud. You get that incredible mitzvah of your tefillahs going up with the unit, with the tzibur versus just of yourself. But back to your point, you can't push aside HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He does not become a secondary factor in your life. So whenever you have those opportunities to make sure he's part of it, make sure he's there. As I said, early in the morning, when you're going to the train, when you're on the train, anything you're wasting on the internet, you could be doing something more productive. That's how you make it an essential part of being an Eved Hashem. Balancing that with the other 2 factors you mentioned. Yes?
Did you feel that any of your core values were challenged when you started making more money at Fidelity?
The question was, did I feel any of my core values was challenged when I was making more money at Fidelity? Not really. I'm not really sure in what sense that would be. I think people who know me for long enough would say my core values haven't changed that dramatically as far as a human being goes. I think people who know me, I think the one thing that it has to change is because the time I've spent in learning, that has definitely affected me on a personal basis. I've had that, that's close really to have that over all the years. But as far as moral values, no, I think the time, again, Fidelity, when I worked there in the 1980s, I can't describe the place today. It was a place of really a lot of family, a lot of people were married. It was a very good environment. The fact that I was making more money, we all loved investing. It was a very good environment, and I don't think it affected core values at all when I was there. Next.
How would you balance between the toddlers and actual and emunah?
Great question. How do you balance hishtadlus and emunah? So I just finished reading a sefer called Darchei Hashgacha, published by Targum Press, by Chaim Gross. And Chaim Gross, I think, is an investment manager. It's not a Rav. No approbations in the sefer. I will tell you, however, the sefer, which is 12 chapters long, if I recall properly, probably has close to 1,500 footnotes in it. And he deals with the question, exactly what you're really talking about. How much of life is bechira, if I can just reframe that, bechira, hishmatus, sort of similar, versus hashgacha pratis? It's a very complicated question. He goes through the development. In the time of the Rishonim, there was a much greater emphasis on really the bechira aspect of your life. If you look at the Rav Sadiq, the Rambam, the Ran, he goes on with many, many examples. In the last 200-300 years, there's been a dramatic shift from the time of the Gra, Hasidus and the Gra, very much in play, from the time of the Lozh, etc., into the aspect of Hashgacha Pratis in your life. So I think the Sefer is kedai to read. It's a thoughtful Sefer, and it'll be interesting if you read it, you should discuss it afterwards. I'd like to find some other people who read it. I'd like to discuss it with them. But I will give you two takeaways about it. First of all, as far as Hashgacha Pratis, the more you let Hashem into your life, the more the Hashgacha Pratis will be in your life. I truly, truly believe it. The more you see Him in your life, the more He's there. And that could be in times of trouble or times of wonderful times. That to me is a given. The second part about Hishtadlus is you have to reach that point. There's no magic line. Rabbi Friend spoke about it in his Tshuva Drasha this past year. I thought it was terrific. You have to do the Hishtadlus, but at the end of the day, you have to say, I've done my Hishtadlus. And at this point, Hashem may want this work, may not want it to work. It may have been my own bad work that it didn't work out. But you can't keep on saying to yourself, well, I have to try hard, because that's how you end up not being frum at the end, because you think everything's in your hands. It's not all in your hands. It's in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hand. And I can't tell you if it's 98% HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or 53%, or 21%. But He definitely is part of the equation. So you have to understand, I've done my best. This is, by the way, in the investment business, it's so true. You go work on a company, you do your best, and sometimes you're right, and sometimes you're wrong. I'll tell you a great line. When I got interviewed for Fidelity, the guy Barry Greenfield, unfortunately no longer living, said to me the following. He goes, in the investment business, if you're right more than 50% of the time, you're doing a good job. If you're right more than 55% of the time, you're doing a great job. And if you're right more than 60% of the time, you're lying. So that is the truth. You make mistakes 40% of your time in the investment. You have to realize you're doing your best. The rest of it in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hands. So again, there's no magic formula, but the more you have part of your life, the more you'll feel it. Anything else? Rabina.
Good question. You can give advice to the boys not interview for a job. In general,
As far as interviewing goes?
when they go to interview, many parents worry about my son is very smart, he's going to stand, he's going to work on a lot of parents of business school. But what is the key to be succeed in the interview?
Okay, very good.
Question.
Wait, no, hold the question. I want to answer the first one, and then I'll answer the second one. It's better to do it that way. It has to be a great question. This is so interesting. It is really important to be properly prepared for your interview. So Avrami Bain, who is Moshe Bain's president of the OU, Avrami is one of his sons, great guy. He's working now in one of the big law firms, starring in one of these law firms. I had a conversation with him a few months ago. And it's been very interesting. At Harvard, there are quite a few yeshivish guys in Harvard now. We all know about it. It's an incredible story. It goes to Alan Dershowitz, Noah Feldman, unbelievable story. Anyway, he said that one of the problems he said that he wished that the yeshivas, and he's talking about Lakewood here primarily, he wished they would work on the students in working on their training of how to do interviews. Exactly your point. He goes, they're bright, that's fine. But when you're being interviewed for law school, he says, the school that's interviewing is thinking about how you're going to interview for your job a year or two from now, because they care about how our placement is, because it makes our law school, look good. That's how important that factor is. So just to emphasize the issue. So I would say the following. Whenever you walk into an interview, a couple of things. First of all, because of the internet, this is fantastic, you should be able to know as much as possible about that company that exists in the public domain. The more you sound intelligent and interested about where you're going into, the better your chances of getting that job. The second thing is, when they interview you, you should be more than just a little box. You should be more colorful and show that you're a broader person than that. I'm the last guy to be talking because I was an accountant and a finance major. I had no variety in my life. But I really believe when you talk to people, you see, and by the way, that goes back to majors. I just got this question the other day, about being a finance major in college. I'm not a fan of a finance major. One thing, you go back for an MBA, it's great. But, in college, you could be a major in other things. It shows you're a broader-based person. The third thing is, when you go into an interview, make sure you present yourself well. You'll know how the firm wants to look at yourself. Make sure you're prepared in the sense of dress properly, answer questions, be respectful to other individuals. Little things to try to pick up. Again, it is intangibles, and I will tell you, quite often with jobs, I really feel this sort of this intangible of culture. Firms are good at picking out whether you will fit the culture of the company. And you probably shouldn't be working at a place where the culture doesn't work. There is no question, when I got the job at Fidelity in 1982, it was a 100% cultural match. It was incredible. When I came back when I got the offer, my mother-in-law told my wife, "You're moving to Boston." She knew, because I was so excited about the interview because they cared about the same values as I do. So in a good interview process, that will come across between the two of you. And and then the last thing, Rabina, you have to daven. You really have to daven. You do your toddlers, as you said before, but you have to daven. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you the capabilities to make a positive impression on these firms. The second question.
Yes. This is a question for me. I'm dealing in education over 42 years. It happened, not one, not two. As later in life became a little Jewish Ganovi. What advice you give us to do with the boys? Usually all the boys, when I told them to be Ganovi, they are Ganovi. What advice? Because I feel, following this next question, we don't now going to New York and in Lawrence, all kind of Jewish Ganovi. They're much worse than Jewish Ganovi. For years I told my friend Aryeh, keep away from them. They are dirty Jews. But some Rabboni, because they gave him a lot of stock, worship them. And this is thing.
I think it's horrible. I don't think you were here when I spoke about it before. I spoke before about the aspect of Chil Hashem, Madoff, etc. I spoke, to me, the answer, and I think I addressed that question, that you have to have halacha paramount in your mind. I gave two examples just recently. It happens to me all the time. You have investments, etc. You have to have a Rav. You have to understand Torah, and you have to. If you believe in Torah, how could you be a Ganav? You're not religious. They're famous for Rav Schwab. If you're a Ganav, who cares? You're not a religious Jew if you're Shomer Shabbos and you're a Ganav. It's just not that way. I'm sorry. I think that's the beginning and end of it. Do you have a moral compass? I don't know where it begins or ends. You have to be. And the investment business, by the way, you were always dealing in a gray line of information. Is this, I will tell you a story. You asked about Peter Lynch before. 1989, sitting in a meeting with Anacomp. I remember the company, Lou Ferraro's big guy, whatever he was. The guy's sitting in a meeting, and it must have been September. He tells us at the meeting his third quarter earnings are going to be really lousy, etc. Peter Lynch, in the middle of the meeting, picks up the phone. They had those phones. You remember these back phones? Picks up the phone. He calls the trading room and tells the trading room, we cannot trade the stock till they report their earnings. That's honesty. That's being. I was on the company. Another story. There was a company in Canada. Right, I won't go into the name of it. I'm on the phone with the CEO. This is right when I was, because I can't trade stock. I mean, they blew the quarter. It cost me a lot of money. Now, there was nobody who would have ever known from the SEC and come to me and said, you traded it. This is weeks before they reported. But you have to have a moral compass. You have to understand what's and if you're a good analyst, by the way, you're able to find that information with not in an illegal sense, but by asking the right questions. That's how you do your job properly. But, I mean, when you're given inside information, you just can't, we had that in the business all the time. I used to wake up every Monday morning. I'd go into the office, open the Wall Street Journal, and which Jew was accused at Drexel Burnham. How many, in the 1980s, this was going on all the time. And I don't know, maybe it just there isn't enough emphasis on this in general. Every yeshiva has Musar Seders, right? They all have a Musar Seder, Musar. Why isn't this discussed in Musar Bads? You have to have a Rav Choshen Mishpat. I use Rav Ari Marburger. He's phenomenal. I mentioned before, I had a big shiloh on him. I spoke to Rav Chaim Cohen. He spent an hour with the company to resolve the issue, and I couldn't make the investment. That's how you have a moral compass. It's no different than anything else. Robert Reno, why is it any different than people go around sleeping with other people? It's the same issue. You either believe in the Torah or you don't believe in the Torah.
And my last question, what is the key not to curse in Wall Street?
Not to...
The key not to curse in Wall Street.
That is a great question. Fantastic. What is the key not to curse on Wall Street? Et chatai ani maskir hayom. I was no saint. I will tell you, and my wife can attest, Deborah can attest to this. When I left my job in 1992, it's now 27 years, I don't know if I've cursed. It can't be 5 times since then. I don't think it's 3 times. I sort of took upon myself, because Wall Street is a terrible type of thing as far as language goes, I took upon myself just not to do it anymore. That's how bad I think it is on Wall Street. So what I would suggest for everybody to do is to do the same. When you leave this yeshiva, you say to yourself, I am not going to curse the rest of my life. There's no reason you have to. There's nothing more infuriating than reading articles in I guess most newspapers and magazines are not respectable journals anymore, since there are at least 50% fake news. But the truth is, when you read these papers and they use curse words, what is wrong with society? Why does that make them cool? I can't understand it. So that's one of the things amongst the many messages you should take out of this yeshiva. Don't curse. We know you shouldn't be cursing, and don't do it. It makes you into such a lowly human being. Hashem gives you this incredible bracha. We have the capability of talking. We have Lashonos. It's Lashon HaKodesh. Our life is about Lashon. There's no curse words in Hebrew, as we all know. There is no curse words. I'm not talking about slang. There are no curse words. That's the way our mouths are kadosh. And make sure you keep that with you.
And my last question, what about drinking?
Drinking is not a Wall Street problem. Drinking is a problem everywhere. As you're very well aware, we're all aware of it. I don't understand it. I'm from a different generation. I grew up in a house where it just wasn't a part of our house. And yet, my kids do some drinking. I don't know anybody who doesn't do some drinking. It's a question of how much drinking you do. I have difficulty in understanding it. But if you're going to drink, you drink a little bit. I guess that's the only thing I could say. I don't know how else to manage it or monitor it. I don't have the answers to the drinking thing, because I don't understand the taiva to keep on doing that. I don't get it. But in every generation, there's different taivas. One of the real problems we have in our generation is taiva for drinking. It's clear it's true in society, and it's true within all walks of Judaism, all forms of orthodoxy. There's drinking all over the place. Come to Kiddushim in the 5 towns. Do you want to see drinking? No, I can't be over here. I don't believe it. Any more questions? I'll let you guys. One more. Go ahead. Last one. I'll let you have lunch afterwards.
Choosing a career, how much do you take religion into account?
I think you do take religion. The question is, in choosing a career, how much do you take religion into account? You do take it into account. Do you want to work in an industry or a business that is against against halacha? So we talked about hemp. Now let's talk about marijuana. So I'm not a posek, okay? But you can go speak to your poskim, and I am not discussing medical marijuana. It's a different topic altogether. But you can talk to people about marijuana. I have spoken to companies, I've spoken to doctors, etc. There is a problem. If you went and got a job offer from a marijuana company, would you take that today? If you got a job offer from a tobacco company, would you take that today? I have not invested in tobacco stocks for 25 years. I made a nether upon myself, and that I've been, 25 years. I will not buy tobacco stock. I think it's just basically a killer. So I think there is an issue of morality when it comes to fields and jobs you look at. It has to be part of the equation. That's the thing that's proper. It's part of your equation. You don't want to work for something that's completely against the values that you believe in. Okay, thank you so
very
much.
much.